My sociology project is on women in the workforce. Most women who worked outside the home were usually young and unmarried. 20% of women were what we called gainful workers, and only 5% of these gainful workers were actually married women. A gainful worker is a woman who was a housekeeper, a childbearer. They usually started household businesses where they sold items that they made. There was also a clear definition between races in this time period. African American women were about twice as likely to participate in the labor force as they remained in that job after they were married. Countries around the world, women are found cooking over fires with smoke filling their lungs, taking care of not only their children, but the children of others, and laboring in factories and harvesting crops. Even though these women do so much, they are still at a greater disadvantage when it comes to pay. According to World Bank, women spend between 2 to 10 more hours a day caring for children, elderly, and the sick than men do. And on top of that, they receive little to no pay. The informal sector refers to those who are self-employed or those who work for someone who is self-employed. The women who work for the informal sector are paid very little, if at all. According to World Bank, if the gap between men and women's pay would close, the world's GDP could grow by $12 trillion in just 5 years. There are also many restrictions when it comes to women in the workplace. World Bank says that there are 104 economies with labor laws restricting the type of job women can undertake. These restrictions are said to affect the employment choices of about 2.7 billion women. This chart consists of a few examples of jobs that fall into the informal sector. This number is equal to about 18%. This chart shows it in a circle graph form so it's easier to understand. The pay gap is worse when broken down by ethnicity. This chart shows the pay grade difference between white men and women of different ethnicities. Women, more often than not, receive a higher education but are still paid less than men. This graph shows that as the degree gets more advanced, the payment gets higher, therefore leading to a greater pay gap. Education does not always make a difference, but it is shown that when both men and women hold the same job, women will generally still be paid less. Women have repeatedly asked for pay raises and promotions accordingly. However, this is very little taken into consideration. More women have to ask for pay raise or promotion than men because they are already not receiving the same amount of pay. Because women do not receive the pay they deserve, they lose millions throughout the course of their career. The fact that many families depend on the woman's paycheck is true, especially of women of color. 81% of Black mothers are breadwinners. Because moms are paid less, it impacts the basics such as food, rent, and other necessities. Mothers are paid around 31% less than fathers. This graph shows the percentage of mothers that are the breadwinners in the family by race. As you can see, for white mothers, this is 50%. Many studies have been done, and it is shown that employed mothers are the women who account for the most of the gender wage gap. Research shows that hourly wages of mothers are approximately 5% lower per child than the wages of non-mothers. Facts like this are extremely hard to hear, as it is shown that mothers have a lot more riding on them because they have to support the children and the family. Roughly 865,000 women left the labor force in September due to COVID-19, compared with the 216,000 men. Women's jobs are 1.8% more vulnerable to the crisis than men's jobs. Due to the pandemic, the unemployment rates have skyrocketed. Many of these jobs belong to women who are barely supporting their families with the incoming paychecks. Through the pandemic, there has been many closures. A lot of these were daycares. These daycare closures obviously affect the working fathers, but statistics say that more women had to leave their jobs or reduce hours to take care of kids who were no longer in school or daycare. Child care is quite expensive at about 7% of a family income, and with wages as low as they are now due to the pandemic, this makes child care less accessible, causing more women to have to leave work and stay with the children. Women in Work, The Labors of Self-Fashioning is a book I looked into to find a more personal perspective on women in the workforce. This slide consists of a few quotes that I found important. The mother in this novel tells her daughter not to marry until she becomes who she is. She tells her daughter this important note because in the time period of this book, it was seen that as women were married, they were domesticated to their husband. She wants her daughter to be her own person before stepping into marriage. My remedy for this social issue is creating a group run by men who understand and stand with women. I believe social issues like these can only be changed when a majority of people or everyone realizes it is a real issue and can be fixed. If the organization is run by a member of the opposite sex, it shows just how much this social injustice has reached everyone. By showing that men understand the severity of this social injustice, it'll help to further the movement. Throughout the world, there are already movements defending women. A group of boys in Montreal in the South Shore took a stand, all starting with Instagram posts declaring Wednesday as a day for the boys to wear skirts to school in support of the cause. The leader of this movement said it had two objectives: one, to fight against the hypersexualization of women's bodies, and two, to attack the dress codes that are deemed sexist and degrading. If a group of teenage boys can create a movement this large, imagine how big a movement could be if there was organization.